Good evening. Welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. I'm Tammy White. I'm the founder of the Bobby White Foundation. And of course, I'm here with my co-host.
Good evening. I'm your co-host, Bonnie Snyder.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome
Good to
back.
be back.
We've had a whole lot of things going on this past week. Personal, business stuff, crazy stuff. But before we get into that, I want to, of course, thank our producer, John, and Rob, Dylan, and Cage here at WeBeam TV for helping us bring you this program every week. We certainly wouldn't be able to do it without them. And I was just thinking, at the end of other shows, they roll the credits. So that's why I want to say that to them.
Oh, exactly.
We don't roll the credits, So.
No, and exactly. We could not do this without them. Making us look good every week.
That and make us laugh and
the fun stuff.
The crazy behind the scenes stuff that you don't see.
Yeah, exactly. The stuff y'all don't see that we see that goes on.
But we also have a new sponsor for the show.
Really?
I'm so excited. It's our subject matter is difficult, so it has been a struggle. But our new sponsor is the Hilton Garden Inn Tampa, which is actually in Lutz, and it's at the Suncoast in 54. That's the location where pre-COVID we held our annual Art for Hope event. They've always been really gracious to us, and I was there a couple weeks ago putting on the stickers for our Art for Hope event and adding a QR code. So all the artwork that's hanging on the main floor of that hotel are artists that I represent in my day job from the gallery. So right next to each of the images is the Art for Hope little card that we had, and I added the QR code, so it'll take you directly to the Art for Hope page, and I'm working on adding those to the Art for Hope page actually on our website, and they'll be available for sale, or you can go out and view them and sit and have a drink at the bar in the evening or something. But I talked to the manager, Michael. I hadn't seen him in like a year and a half, and he hadn't even known about the show. And he's like, Tammy, haven't you asked me? And I was like, well, they had a really rough year in 2020, with COVID. And he's like, no, he says, you put me down. But he's putting up a challenge for everybody here in the community too. And you don't even have to be in the community if you want to sponsor us, but he's doing a $250 sponsorship, and he's challenging other organizations to match his $250. So that's a challenge from Michael Kidd from the Hilton Garden Inn in Lutz. We're just so appreciative of that.
Yeah, and I know, as you said, and as we've said on the show, numerous times, this is, and can be a difficult topic for people to talk about. But at the same time, it is something that is real. It is something that impacts families. We're doing this because it impacts us personally. But along with having those of y'all who view in, tune in. I'm still
too much zooming.
My brain is still, my brain is probably still on vacation a little bit. But no, seriously, there's several, many of you guys that tune in every week, to watch what we do and to listen to the, what we're talking about. Either because you're on this journey yourself, or somebody that's on the journey, or what you get from it, in your own self. And we could not do this without you guys as well. But having sponsors is nice, and I like that. That challenge is thrown down. I believe in just throw down the gauntlet.
That's what he's done. So hopefully, we can add some more corporate sponsors. I mean, it's a really big deal, so that's really cool. But you out there are too, as an individual, you can sponsor us. We have our Kindest page, which has different level of sponsorships. So whatever you feel comfortable sponsoring, I think I started it out at $5, and it goes all the way up. You want sponsors for a year for $25,000? That would be super awesome. But there's also at the very bottom of the sponsorship, you can click on that QR code and it'll take you directly to that page. But there's also a space down there that you can put in whatever amount you'd like to put in, whatever you feel comfortable doing. And every dollar is greatly appreciated to help bring this to you, and our programs, our Purple Folder program, and other programs that we're developing to help people in our situation, or going through it, or it's been through it, or and it's not, some of it isn't totally just suicide loss survivors. Some of it is suicide prevention, some of it is grief, just dealing with the different aspects of.
And some of it is just, sitting down, just having a conversation about, when I think about, this show and, the concept, that we came up with is, we were discussing, what are we going to do, how are we going to do this? And, we've said this a couple of times, this is completely unscripted.
Half the time we know about 5 minutes ahead of time what we're going to talk about.
Exactly, but I like the idea that, we're able to, preview, it's like, oh, hey, I found this good book, on the subject. Right. Let's go through this book chapter by chapter. Or, when, like what we did this past Saturday, at the park with Parks and Rec. Hey, there's an event coming up. Let's bring the person who is hosting or sponsoring that event to talk about, here's a way as a community that, we can get involved with. Or, like I said, it's, some people are so turned off when they hear we're talking about suicide, we're talking about, mental health, we're talking about, substance misuse and how all of these things play into one another. But at the same time, it is, also like, let's, for lack of a better word, normalize it, make it okay to, be talked about.
Well, and the thing is, like what you said, when we bring out what we bring to the table, this is everyday life.
Yes.
It's not something special. It's everyday life, and what we talk about, and what when we bring guests on or talk about events that we're going to, that's just part of our everyday life. It's we're not I don't know what to do.
It's the main reason of it is to bring awareness, because if I look at like the different population, which populations are affected where, and we should have show. My job away from here, when I'm not doing this, I consider this my fun job, and then there's, the job that, my
pays
job,
the bills.
The job that pays the bills. I can say that on the air. It's our show. But no, then I have, my job that pays the bills, well, I work in mental health. That's kind of what I do. So of course, people who are in, that line of work, we're so data driven, and we're so, hey, we've got to focus on this epidemic because of this. But I think of, again, the different populations. I'm also a veteran, so when I think of every, 22 minutes a veteran dies by suicide, how many people know that? And, what I find is, when we break it down to, okay, so in this population, and again, if I focus on veterans for a second, everybody, when you say, veteran, oh, thank you for, I think I hear all the time, thank you for your service. And, and of course, it's my pleasure. However, I, am cognizant to, wow, you're a veteran, the sacrifice, they think of veterans as sacrifice, and, you're willing to die for the country and all this other good stuff. True. But do you also know that, along with that population comes every 22 minutes, a veteran is dying from suicide? Well,
and one thing that is not really well known about that part of it, it's not just the veterans.
Correct.
It's the veterans' families.
Right.
Also that are part of that suicide phenomena, I guess you would say. The veterans get the highlights of it. They're the ones that are shown, but there are a lot of families,
Well, and I think-
spouses and children, family members that are also dying by suicide when they have an active veteran, or somebody that's active in the military. That is happening also, and that's not being talked about, or that's not being brought into the common part of the statistics about it.
See, and I would look at you and say, as a vet, I might push back on that a little bit, because from at least the veteran culture that I come from, it is all encompassing. It is, the veteran and the family, are all in one. However, I want to say there is that belief, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, in that, well, veterans, you guys are the ones making the sacrifice, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, that's true. However, when I think of, my own children, I was a single mom, and, I was a veteran, when I was serving, I was a single mother raising 3 children while I was in the military. And, if I fast forward to, today, or even, I can even roll back tape to, years ago, and I asked my children, are you guys ever thinking about joining the military? No. Why not? We served when you served.
Exactly. Well, and that's how I feel about families who have service members. I've always, but not everybody sees it that way. But it is becoming more and more that people are seeing it that way, because it's being talked about more that way. But what I'm saying, that as far as the families of service members that are dying by suicide are not being reported.
Well, and I think,
as
what I think is really happening, and again, this is just kind of where the numbers that I look at is, we tend to break the numbers out into different pockets. So we have, we are just looking at veteran specific, not the civilian component of military service. These are those numbers.
Right.
When we look at, the veterans' families, and I think, I might say that those, those people, put it that way, are counted more in civilian numbers than they are in this. So it's not so much, at least from my perspective, it is not so much that they're not being reported, or it isn't focused. It is, let me think, how do I want to put this? If we want to look at, let's just say, teen suicide, right? It's not to dismiss any other suicide that's going on. I mean, Bobby was not a teenager, okay?
by far.
Aiden was a teenager, and so we're like, okay, let's look at teen suicide. It is not that Aiden's death was more important than Bobby's death. Now if we flip it, let's look at the suicide death among adults, and it's like, oh, does that mean Bobby's death was more important than Aiden's? No, we're not saying that. And then if we look at, oh, well, what were the contributing factors? Well, if I, again, do a comparison, Aiden to Bobby, Aiden, we're thinking, was more, depression. So one might say, oh, well, there was that mental health component to it. Well, does that mean that if this were the case, with what Bobby was dealing with, how much of that was because of the MS? So it's like, oh, well, if Bobby hadn't had MS, then he wouldn't have had depression, and then, he might still be here, and so I think what happens, where I have a love-hate relationship with statistics and numbers, like when I was in school, it's like, I don't want to take stats.
Oh, that was my worst class.
I hated stats. But at the same time, again, my love-hate relationship with statistics come in is that sometimes people tend to get lost in the numbers.
Right.
Well, we're talking about this, but we're not talking about this. So are you telling me that this is less important than that? No. What we're saying is, if you look at, for me, it's the demographics. is there a population that's being affected more than the others? And if there is, what's going on? I mean, at the end of the day, I think the goal is, to, as the event on Saturday said, stomp out suicide. I get it, some people get to that place. At the same time, hey, let's get to a place where it is not that, like, you don't see that as your only out. And so, like I said, for me, I love the numbers, but like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with the numbers.
Yeah, and you come from it from an odd perspective, I would say, because of your job. You come from it from the clinical side, but you also come at it from the personal side too. Where me, I don't come, it's never was a part of my job. I come from strictly the experience part of it. And when I first started getting involved, and actually when we first started developing the Purple Folder, I came to the table as the only person that was there as a person coming from experience. Everybody else there, it was their job. Mm. And then in a very short period of time, they changed jobs, they went here, and they changed jobs, they went there. And that little group that started dismantled. Because it was their job. It was not that, it was just their job. To me, it was personal. Yeah, and so that's why I stuck with it, and one other person, and that's how the foundation ended up finishing actually between me and another gal, developing the Purple Folders and the Purple Folder program being turned over to our foundation, which to me was a good thing. Jody Nicosia and I are the ones that worked on this initially, and she was at the time with
CSVHN.
Yeah, Central Florida Children's and Family Systems of Care. And
I love Jody.
And we worked on this for 2.5 years. And the first year, it was a collaboration of our foundation and that organization. That was our very first grant funding was from them. And then we took it over after that.
And I think that's the one thing that I think some people don't realize about, the field that I work in, is, oftentimes some of the things that we do is grant funded.
Right.
And I think what happened, back when, when this first started, because I remember you coming to a coalition meeting that, that I was part of that coalition, and talked about the program, and I think, that's kind of an unfortunate thing with, being grant funded or having a governmental, kind of control, for lack of a better word, over something, because, it is, we have this epidemic going on at the moment, and, at the time for some, it was focused on suicide, because I remember from the, the VA side of it, or veterans group side of it, it was, what did we do that year? It was called the 21-day challenge, so it was like a 22-day challenge. And so it was for 22 days, you had to do 22 push-ups. And, each, like you go on your Facebook page, here's my 22 push-ups to, for, each service member, that has died by suicide. And today I challenge so-and-so. And, the idea was like, well, hey, if everybody's going around doing this this push-up challenge, the idea was to, obviously to spread awareness for suicide. So a lot of funding went behind it. Let's do this. But then it's, I don't want to say it's, the flavor of the month changed. And it's like, okay, so now we focus on suicide for a while. Let's focus on something else. Because you're right, I do come at it from, like a couple of different hats, but I was, I don't know if the word you used, odd, unique, no, what word did you use just now a minute ago? It is a perspective, because you're right, when we lost Aiden and then, followed up with Patrick, it's, that was always, some of the populations that I work with was around grief and loss and stuff like that. So this was always a part of my quote unquote job. 2 years ago, it got personal.
Right.
Because then, it was like, and it wasn't so much that, for some of us, we understand grief and loss, because we, at some point in our life, have experienced some kind of grief or, or some kind of loss. And we had to process, through it. And it's like, okay, that's natural. Okay, that's normal. All right, we expected that one. Where, it, for me, shed a whole completely different light on it. And it was like, oh, it's basically like, I'm bringing my A game already. I mean, it's a little narcissistic of me to say that. But no, seriously, like I put, my passion into my work. But now it's like, now I'm putting my passion and a little more of my heart into this. Not that my heart wasn't in it before, but it really got personal, to your point, really got personal then. And I know we joke we joke once in a while on the show about, when I met you for the first time, who is she to tell me it's not ready, but at the same time, it's like, no, this does, if someone, if that someone is us on the show, if this someone is Parks and Rec doing their event, if it's, the Out of Darkness walk that's coming up, if people stop talking about this subject or, any subject, I feel it creates this illusion that everything is fine.
Right.
That the issue does not exist anymore. The epidemic has gone away. And I'm like, guys, I don't know who told you that. But
Well, and speaking of the event this weekend too, it was a busy weekend, busy weekend. So a few weeks ago we had Kim on from Pasco County Parks and Rec, and Saturday morning was their event out in Dade City with Lacucci River Park, and you and I were both out there. Me more with the foundation, visited every once in a while by Bonni with ASAP. You were out there with ASAP or with Baycare?
I was out there actually as the community health activation team for Baycare.
So
I've never mentioned my work before. We just did.
It was a long drive at 6 o'clock in the morning in the dark to the boondocks of Dade City.
And see, for me,
but you
that drive didn't bother me because I work in that area. So I was going, I'm going to work.
You travel out there, but for me, leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning, no idea where I was going. Because like I said, I've never been to that park. I mean, it's beautiful out there.
I told you.
It was a perfect morning. By the time I got up there, the sun hadn't even quite risen yet, and everybody was setting up. It was just a gorgeous morning. They had a really good turnout for their first event in the boondocks. And the reason that they decided this is going to be an annual event. It's Stomp Out Suicide 5K run, and that one's the Out of the Darkness walk. That one we'll talk about in just a second. This event, and it's a long name because it's a 5K Stomp Out Suicide, 1 mile, and recreate or recreate. No,
actually,
mind.
Okay.
How does it?
The way it goes is recreate your mind.
Mm-hmm.
5K run, 1 mile walk to Stomp Out
Suicide. Okay, yeah, I knew it was.
Although that is in there, but it is.
Kim even challenged somebody at the event to come up and say the entire name properly, and I don't know if anybody ever did.
I think somebody went up and they walked away with the prize.
They got a prize, yeah. So, but it was a really good event. Like I said, the weather was perfect over there. Made some good contacts. Talked to several people. Of course, a lot of the people have been affected by suicide, so it was more of an easier conversation with people at that event. And then I left there and came back over to our side of the county. Well, our volunteers were setting up at the 2021 Red, White, and Back to Blue event at Gill Dogs. And now, to kind of frame this a little bit, Parks and Rec had lost a team member to suicide in the spring, and therefore this is what has driven them to back this cause and bring a bunch of organizations together to as resources and help, and get the word out that again, not one organization is going to be able to tackle this problem, no matter where you live. If your community is small or if your community is big, there's just no way. So that is what they're doing. So the Red, White, and Back to Blue we were at, and of course we've lost, actually in the last couple of years, a couple deputies to suicide.
One recently.
And yeah, one recently, one in 2019. And so that's why partly we get invited and we want to be a part of that also. The Newport Richey, Port Richey, and Dade City Police Departments all carry our purple folders. And then also I have a nephew who is a police officer in Arlington, Texas. And so we were at that event. In the beginning, we had little giveaways, and we had more people sign up for the giveaways at the smaller event in Dade City than we did at Gill Dogs. But as the day went on, we got a little bit more, and some people would come up and talk to us, not as openly per se as it was at the other event, but there were some brave people that would come up and talk to us and find out what we were about and what we were doing, and thanking us, and sold a couple T-shirts, and it was a really good event. It was a comfortable event. It wasn't like overcrowded, so you didn't feel like there were too many people there. The music was great. So started out, left the house at 6 o'clock in the morning, and got back at about 9 o'clock that night.
I'm not going to tell you what time I left my house, and
Well,
I didn't get home until the next day.
Yeah. Well, you and your vacation.
What's that? Yeah, but I came back on vacation to do the event, at the park. And like Tammy said, the event out at Parks and Recreation is yes, because, if you understand or you knew the Parks and Rec family, it is a family. This is a tight-knit community. And, I chuckle because like, oh, I'm going to work. I do a lot of work with them and for them. And Kim and I started out as strangers. We connected. Hey, can you, we need this service out here. Can you do this? And we've since become personal friends. So I remember when their team member, had taken his life. Myself and another coworker on my team that I work for, where, like I said, the three of us are good friends. He called her, called me, I called her, and the loss for the department was devastating because unfortunately, if I remember correctly, he was at the park. He was at one of the parks. I think that's where they found him.
I think it was at home.
Don't quote us on where,
Yeah, because
regardless.
I remember Kim saying that they had sent somebody there, the door was open to let the dogs out, his mom. But it doesn't really matter.
Right, regardless. But so anyway, the walk, or this event was, like Tammy said, was to, bring awareness. And you're right, the energy out there, although, we're stomping out suicide. I love the way the message was brought forward, in terms of, we really need to, really need to focus on this epidemic. We really need to focus on what can we do to, reach people who might be, considering, but then also, connecting with, the friends, families, loved ones of, the lost survivors, because, I mean, it is a thing.
Well, that and like, they found out too how hard it is to find resources after an event like that. And that's what, pulling, a lot of us together that were there so that people are introduced to more resources and to know, because that's why we started the foundation. That was the hardest thing afterwards is, are there resources? Is there help out there? Are we doing this alone? And now we're beginning, particularly here, to speak out more and be out there more and get these resources wrapped around the community so that people have less of a chance. It's still going to happen. People are still going to fall through the cracks. Some of it may be because they don't want to acknowledge it or whatever reason, but we are beginning to get that so that people can be wrapped around this and we can get them resources, what's going to fit them for their situation or where they're at whatever point they're ready for it.
And the nice thing about the folder too is they can be sent anywhere. We, as you guys know, in early airings of the show, we had Kira, Aiden's mom, on, who is a nurse, and she's like, I need some more folders. And we're in Florida. She's in Kansas or Missouri. Yeah, I think she's on the Kansas side of the. I always get the two sides mixed up. Carl, I think, is on the Missouri side. She's on the Kansas City side. Everybody, no, that's how it is. But anyway, and the nice thing about this is, the folder, the resource page, can be recreated to identify resources in your area. What affects, what is there for you here. So of course, okay, we'll send you a folder, but they're looking at it. I mean, these are all in Florida. Well, Florida's not going to do any good in Kansas. And so...
Well, and two, there still are a lot of resources in here that aren't specific to us. But, like every time we do a reprinting, this is our second reprint, we're finding new resources locally. And then, if we get areas that, hey, this is what we want, we have half a page that all we got to do is switch out your resource information for our resource information, and it's yours. And that's, we're working towards that too. Hopefully we've sent them as far as Washington State and Connecticut. So, and it's, when Kira requested more of those, I was like, oh man, here, how many do you want? Fortunately, we had a good supply, but it's both a double-edged sword. In a way, we'll probably be doing our third printing here in the next few months. It just shows that it's needed. I'm glad that we can do it, but it's sad that it's needed. But at least people have something instead of just it's hard enough anyways. We don't want to make it any more difficult.
And for me, I like the idea of having something that I can look at the moment, because again, like we were talking about, like, the personal side of it, for instance, working in the field. Mm-hmm. There are times where, I'm like, who do I need to call? What do I need to do? And having, get your brain engaged, because your brain, it's like you do go into this, I don't want to think about anything. Don't ask me any questions because my brain isn't functioning like that right now. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an excellent resource because you're right. Some people are, it's been sorely needed because, we've had people, I don't know, even, I'll go, out at the event on Saturday. And, hopefully she won't kill me later on. A sister is due. my oldest sister is here. Can't see her. She's sitting over there.
All of a sudden, huh?
She came out, to the event with us. I was like,
Right.
since you're here, you're visiting, I would give a shout out to her. She came to babysit kids while my daughter and I went on vacation.
Right.
So, thank you. But anyway, there was a woman that came up to the table, and she asked, what are resources for this side of the county?
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, I don't know. So, I looked back at this table, and it's like there's a woman. She's in orange, and so I had a conversation with her, and she told me she was part of the business community, and the business community, and she's like, I have people who work for me, people who work in some of the other companies that I'm affiliated with, and I don't know where to fund resources. And so I looked at her and I said, oh, well, and I gave her, an info sheet, from mental health
Mm-hmm.
facilities. Here's a list. I said, I can tell you, who I work for, and, here's our info sheet, but, here's my contact information. So again, it continues to be, for me anyway, not surprising to have people come up and say, where are the resources? Who can I go to when I need, help with whatever this is?
Well, I had a gal who worked at one of the hospitals on that side of the county, and I told her about Kira, and she said, can I take this to my boss? And so maybe, and I don't remember which hospital it was that she told me that she worked at, but she was taking a purple folder to the hospital, so that may end up being another one of our community partners that will have the folders available. Mm-hmm. So that's, you go into these events, you never know who you're going to talk to. I had a gal, she was one of the runners, and we were talking, and she shared with me she lost 2 of her brothers to suicide. Mm. And she was pretty, she was a young gal, and it's just, and that's why she was there running and supporting. And for me, a lot, now doing these events and being able to do these events is helpful for me in my journey to be able to help others. And that kind of is like what the very, very last part of this book that we had been going for. We've had a little vacation from this book because last week we had on Teresa Daniels and Kathy Goodman from the Pasco County Out of the Darkness Walk. Mm. And so what I said 2 weeks ago, what we were going to do, isn't what we did, because who goes on vacation? And, we were talking about it that day, and then right after the show you say, oh, by the way, I'm going on vacation next week.
No, I think it was, do you remember, I'm not going to be here. What are we going to do about Tuesday? I would have had no problem remoting from the cabin that I was at.
No, I wasn't gonna have you do that. There was no way. Hey, because if I would be able to do that, I'd do it too. But this is a really excellent book to help anyone with any kind of grief, not just suicide loss. Because she has sections in here where you can journal all the way through each chapter. But at the very end of it is as you move on. And I think that's kind of like the journey of where we're at, what we're doing with what we have now. She says here, and I agree with most of it, but part of it I don't. Integrating your loss means that you can take this life experience, allow it to be part of who you are, and begin to feel whole again. And it's the last two words that I don't see. I can take this experience, and now I'm integrating it into my life now, in a much different life than I thought I was going to have. But I don't ever see being whole again. There's always going to be a part that's not going to be there.
You know, and what I say to that is I understand, you know, where that is, you know, where that feeling is coming from. And, you know, what we say on let's say on this side of the couch to that is, you know, oftentimes, you know, when we lose someone, you know, whether, you know, be it, you know, to suicide or whatnot, a piece of us is gone. And, you know, we will always hold that piece of us, you know, with us, you know, and I think as long as we have that, you know, the memory of the person, the love that we had for the person, you know, that aspect of that person, you know, that fills that hole that is left by the physical piece, you know, that the physical presence being gone. Because oftentimes what I look at people and I say, okay, are you, well, let's look at it this way. Are you a whole person, you know, let's say in relationship statuses, for example. So were you a whole person before you married Bobby? Or did marrying Bobby make you whole? And you know, for some people, it takes them a moment to like, you know, what does she mean by that? And I remember the first time I asked that question, are you whole without the relationship, or does the relationship make you whole? And someone's like, I never really looked at it like that before. And I said, precisely. So we are a whole human being within ourselves, you know, and yeah, this concept of pieces of us get taken away when we lose somebody. It is more, however, not us and our wholeness. It is the, you know, experience of having them physically here. It is the grief of I don't have them to look them in the face and say, you know, how's your day going? I love you. You know, what are we doing this weekend? And you know, for you know, I get it. For some people, getting over, you know, that, or you know, grasping the concept of I'm whole, even though the person is gone, is difficult. And it is, you know, it's you know, she pointed out in this book, you know, as we've gone through the chapters, you know, and I mean the subsequent books that we, you know, featured on the show, the journey is different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay not to feel whole. At the same time, one day, you know, it's almost like, oh, and I think I said this when I was, you know, yeah, I was working with you know, as I mentioned, a therapist, seeing a therapist. You know, but I said, it's almost like if I allow myself to feel normal, am I in some way invalidating or making, Patrick or Aiden, making them less significant, like their life didn't matter? And it's like, I understand how you feel. However, that's, you know, we'll call it distorted thinking.
Right.
You know, you can be whole, but still, you know, have that little piece of your heart missing.
Yeah, and she says here to also, which kind of plays into that, you may have lost your direction, your sense of who you are, and your sense of stability. You will regain those, but in a different way.
Yes. You know, and I like the quote in the beginning where, you know, from, you know, the great poet Robert Frost. In 3 words, I can sum up everything I know about life. It goes on.
Yeah.
And I think for that, you know, for some people, those words are either hopeful or they are offensive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, what do you mean life goes, you know, my life will never be the same? Correct. Correct. However, you can do one of two things with the loss. You can let it consume you, and as I said, a family member looked at me and said, you have other children. You need to focus on them. You need to let go of the fact that, how do you let go of the fact that your child is gone? It's time to move on. In my own way, I will. In my own time, I will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, don't tell me how to grieve.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that you don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. So, and I like what she says here in this last paragraph of the book, that she writes here, I hope you will continue your journey of self-awareness and growth, learning from life and becoming cognizant of who you are in the world is a wise and rewarding way to proceed. Love yourself and accept love from others. Find some comfort and direction in the stories and advice of others.
And what we were just talking about there, where she says, I hope you find a way to make your loss a part of who you are, but not the definition of who you are. And, I would say for some of us, it is more it becomes more of a definition than it does it's a part of me, but it's not the definition of me.
And I think with some people, especially with, what we're trying to break and reduce the stigma of suicide, I think it's hard for some people to not have that define them or their loved one who died. You know what I mean?
I do, because again, when I look at it from my, if I personalize it for a moment, for me, it was having to not having to explain, but having the perception from some people to have to explain, you're a mental health professional. How did this happen in your family? Because my family's just as normal as everybody else, or abnormal, depending on who you ask.
Well, yeah. Well, and
this is not an epidemic that discriminates.
No, it doesn't. And it's, and even like with me, Bobby and I were together for almost 30 years. I didn't see this coming. And some people, would say, how could you not see that? How didn't you know? I lived with this man every single day for almost 30 years. And
well, it's, if you sit back and think about it, it's like, when, listening to Kira tell, the story, about with the agent, and she was like, it was a normal, night in the house. They sat down, they had dinner, tabletop conversation. Dinner was over. Hey, I'm going to bed. Have a good day. All right. Everything okay? Yep, I'm fine. And she, I think how she put it was, and all the while he was lying to my face.
mm-hmm.
And, she says, because he knew that he wasn't going to be there the next day. And I say, well, but did he? Because, we will know.
But and that's part of it too.
Yeah,
You'll never know.
We can't know. Did he know that he was going to, did he plan as he was walking up the stairs to go to bed that night? I'm going to close the door, I'm going to snap a picture to my girlfriend, and, I will not be here tomorrow. I think about, the day I got on the airplane, had I known, that wasn't the last time that I saw my son alive, would I have gotten on the plane? Should I have gotten up? What did I miss? You know, and again, it is a process to go through to not to allow it to define you, not allow it to consume you. You know, the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, you know, what did I miss, you know, blaming and whatnot, it's normal. At the same time, you know, again, not making it all consuming.
Yeah. You know, Stephanie Jose, she has in the back of this book some, and we've talked about a couple of these, some really great references and books that she referred to, and several of them is Dr. Alan Wolfelt, who we've featured one of his books on here before. And I found this other one. I thought this was really kind of neat. Neat isn't like probably the right word, but well, I think we might have a little bit of time to do this. I found this podcast called "What's Your Grief?" and it's by these two young ladies, Eleanor Haley and Lisa Williams, and they have a podcast which can be found on YouTube and iTunes, and their website is "What's Your Grief?" a grief website for the rest of us. And it's a couple young women in the mental health field. Rob, do we have time to play that clip? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lisa Williams.
And I'm Eleanor Haley.
We're the co-founders and mental health professionals behind What's Your Grief?
We are a website and web community dedicated to talking about everything related to grief and coping with life after loss.
So here on our YouTube channel, you'll find all sorts of videos about all topics around grief. And if you want to learn more, you can visit our website, whatsyourgrief.com, or check out our podcast.
And of course, subscribe to our channel to receive all of our newest videos.
Thanks.
Now, if you go on their website, I had this pull up a second ago. Let me see if I can do it like real fast. They have like little mini courses, and I did that wrong. And some of them are free, and I think, I don't know if I wrote that one down. There's a couple of them that are free, and some of the others are only like $10 or $15. Little courses that you can go through on your own. I didn't write it down. But I thought that they were really engaging, and their age was might help some people, you know, deal with some of this. And so they have, like I said, they have a podcast. Their website, I think, is a really good resource. And she, in this book, it's one of her top references in this book. So I've been looking at it a lot, and I'm going to throw it out to the universe that maybe sometime we can get those two gals on our show.
Let's cross our, we can only hope.
You know, we've got a lot of resources. So, so check out their podcasts and their website for additional resources also. So, again, well, I guess maybe we could wrap it up with some events that are still coming up. We've got the Out of the Darkness Walk on November 13th. And like I said, last week we had the walk chairperson, Kathy Goodman, on here. And that's a Saturday. I think registration starts around 8 o'clock at Sims Park in Newport Richey. And also that day, later in the day, I think it's in Tarpon Springs, there's a bowling fundraiser that's going to be put on by Ian's Way. And Jennifer Mitchell, who started Ian's Way, the nonprofit, she lost her son Ian 2 years ago in August to suicide. And I believe that starts at 3 o'clock, but we're going to have her on the show next week to talk about that. And she didn't realize it was on the same day, but I think she's going to come up and help us out at the walk, and then I'm going to go down and help her out at the bowling tournament. And then, of course, we have Art for Hope, which is a continual pop-up events. Just keep checking back on the website as I add artwork. It's a new process, so it's kind of slow, but we're running this until November 20th, which is Suicide Loss Survivors Day. And again, you can see a lot of the art right now out at the Hilton Garden Inn, but I will be putting that artwork up on, there's a piece. This is an artist, David Willis, that I've represented for many years. And Alex Grappi, I have a great collection of his pieces that are just, they're really cool. And this is an artist, Neil Adamson. I've been representing him, oh gosh, almost 25 years. He's actually a retired St. Pete firefighter, and all his is Florida type art.
Another thing, real quickly, I mean, the show will air before this happens, but this weekend on Saturday is the DEA Take Back, where they're
okay.
collecting, unwanted medications and whatnot, which is good for people to get it out of the house. Because some people use meds but there are drop locations around the community that you can dispose, of unwanted medications safely.
That's what I was going to ask. There's places year-round you can do that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
If
yeah,
you,
that's-
reach out. I have we have the cards, and I have the cards in my office. It tells you where the drop locations are.
Okay, so if you have any of that and you don't make it, just reach out to us and we can direct you to where you can drop it off. So again, remember, there's always hope.